Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are driving a Ford Mustang GT. Now for those not in Australia, you may be interested to know that the Mustang has been Australia's best-selling sports car. Since 2015, they have sold 33,000 of these cars in Australia. Those are big numbers. Now let's put those numbers into perspective a little bit. Aussies have always loved V8 cars. We've made and consumed a lot of V8 Commodores over the years when we still made them, and V8 Falcons too, albeit in lesser numbers. But in 2017, which was the last year of the Commodore, they sold 13,500. But the same year, they sold 9,200 Mustangs. So that's quite significant when you consider the numbers alongside the production of our local cars. Now the Mustang that I'm driving today is a 2025 model, so it is the 7th generation that came out in 2024. It is marketed as being a new generation, although it is somewhat of a facelift from the 6th generation. It has got some cosmetic and interior upgrades and some mechanical changes too, although it is more or less a carryover from the one before. This colour is leadfoot grey with the optional stripes. They look pretty good. As far as exterior changes, there is an entire new front section with new headlights which look really, really good, in my opinion at least. The rear is a little bit more simple. It still retains the iconic 3-bar light design, but the section in the middle of them now is color-coded to the paint rather than black like it was on the last car. And on the side profile, it looks like the overhang at the rear is slightly less too. Now, as for pricing, the 2.3 EcoBoost 4-cylinder starts at about $72,000, while the GT V8, which is this one, in manual form starts at $84,000, whereas the auto is about $87,000. It makes more sense to get the manual on that basis, doesn't it? It's cheaper. And the convertible's about 93,000 Australian dollars. And the Track Focus Dark Horse starts at about 106,000. This is before on-road costs, by the way. On average, though, it's about a $5,000 increase since the 6th generation, so it's gone up a little bit. Look at this little sticker at the back. It's all the generations of the Mustang. That's pretty cool. All right, let's go drive. Oh, and please subscribe, by the way. That would really help. It does feel very well built in here. The air conditioning is excellent. The cooled seats are fantastic. I never thought I'd need them until you're out in Australia in the summer. The bolstering isn't... The Recaros would be a little bit better for the bolstering. I would like a tiny little bit more support for fast corners. There's metallic door handles and metallic inserts around the wheel, which feel really good. And it doesn't feel cheap. Like American cars over the years have gotten a little bit of grief for definitely not being on par with the Germans, but they're a cheaper car than German equivalents, so you naturally pay for that a little bit with interior quality. But really, in here it does feel really well made. The only thing I initially wasn't a fan of is the digital gauged cluster. Obviously the old Mustang, the 6th generation, did have a segregated cluster with the gauges and the infotainment being separated. And it did look a little bit better. I think I know a few manufacturers do this, BMW do it now, Cadillac do it too. I feel like having one whole continuous screen does feel a little bit like an afterthought. Like here we are, we've built a really nice interior and we've got the gauges and we've got the infotainment, we'll slap it on. But because it is recessed and sits lower within the dashboard, it doesn't sort of stand out. Your eyes go over it pretty well. And I must say, the actual quality and resolution is really good. The reversing camera is excellent, really high quality. And the readouts, they're easy to read. They don't look that bad. There is so much room. I'm 6'3" and I got plenty of headroom between me and the roof. A lot of leg room. My feet are quite extended towards the pedals at the moment. If anything, I could probably move the seat forward and there's still plenty of room left in it to bring it back. I'm not a massive fan of not having physical buttons for the air conditioning controls though. You have to operate that through the screen, which at least when you're on the move, it's too distracting, really. There's a massive press from at least our government to not be on your phone while you drive, but I think screwing around with a touchscreen can be, in some cases, just as bad. Well, out on a nice open bit of road, it is at the end of the day a Mustang GT. The GT in its name should mean that it's able to Grand Tour well, and yeah, it really does. This car does not have the optional Magna-Ride suspension, so it's a fixed rate damping setup. And around town or at slower speeds, it definitely feels a little bit on the firmer side, but like most cars, when you're actually out on the road, it starts to settle. You can drive on these sorts of roads or on the highway all day and not get tired. The suspension is well balanced, it's not punishing, it's the perfect sweet spot between not being too firm but not being too soft. And I love looking in the mirror. You can see this really sort of aggressive back quarter panel and then the spoiler. It's actually very entertaining just to look in your rear view mirror whenever you're driving, just to see that. This car does not have the optional 6-speed manual. It is the 10-speed gearbox known as the 10 R80. And at least driving around, look, I think it has too many ratios. Going up here, for example, accelerating a bit. It feels very CVT-like. So I think an 8-speed would have been plenty enough for this sort of an engine. In manual, gear changes are quick. However, because the ratios are so short, you spend a lot of time going through the gears, which I think can aid the feeling of acceleration and urgency. But I think there's sort of a balance where it can become a little bit too frantic and like a little bit too much is going on. And I think this car very nearly crosses into that territory. As smooth as the gearbox is, you do get a little bit of inconsistencies with downshifts, I find. They're not the smoothest in the world, and you do get a little bit of a jolt through the car. It's the only sort of fault I've found with it so far. Now this engine, for the 7th generation, receives 2 intakes and 2 throttle bodies. So power is up to 480 horsepower and 550 Newton meters of torque. It's got a very linear power delivery. Peak power comes in at 7,100 RPM, so right at the top of the rev range. The engine though is definitely a highlight of this car. Being a quad cam and making quite a lot of its power up in the top end of the rev range, it's beautifully progressive. And you do feel as if there's another 300 or 400 RPM left before the limiter cuts in. Guy in a sidecar with his dog.
So good.
That is the life. For those who remember, the Aussies at least watching, the FPVs from the 2000s, in the end, were using Coyote V8 engines. They had different pistons, different cams, and a supercharger. But the funny thing is they were making about 470 horsepower. This, throughout the years, with the improvements that they've made internally in naturally aspirated form, is making 480. It obviously doesn't have the torque because it doesn't have a supercharger, but that's pretty impressive when you think about it. And this engine is bloody entertaining. It's not something that you'll ever get bored of. He is not standing in a very safe place. For the 7th generation, we have a new strut brace across the front and a new K-brace across the rear. And the chassis rigidity is fantastic. For a car that weighs 1.7 tonne, body roll is brilliantly controlled. You're not really getting any impression of it at all. And for a car that at speed doesn't feel ridiculously firm, it sort of surprises you a little bit with how flat it remains during corners, with having suspension that isn't punishing and still works beneath the car. Now, one of my favourite things about this car so far, steering. The feel, not too much of that, being an electric steering rack. This 7th generation does have slightly quicker steering rack than the one before it, and turn-in is surprisingly quick, but it's the progressiveness of the steering. The weighting is just fantastic. I'm leaving it in the lighter setting, partly because I at least associate heavy steering with road feel. And because you don't get a lot of that, may as well just leave it in the lighter setting. It's beautifully weighted anyway, and it's so adjustable and so linear. Something that I have really gotten to enjoy is the braking. It's fantastic. A lot of feel through the pedal. They are 6-piston, 380mm Brembo rotors. The rears are 330. And the consistency through the pedal and the brake feel and how authoritatively the car slows down is, it's just brilliant. You don't expect to get into a 480 horsepower V8 rear wheel drive and start geeking out over the brakes. You know, that's a pretty well set up platform. It's got a limited slip diff, just a Torsen mechanical one, nice and simple, but at the same time effective. So yeah, you can come out of corners and just lean on it straight away, and you don't get any hint of traction braking. I think you have to be driving like an idiot. Like, yeah, with all the aids off and enough steering input and enough throttle input, of course it'll oversteer. For normal driving, yeah, you can be pretty aggressive with how you want to pull out of a corner, and the car will get the power to the road without trying to send you gardening. And here we are going through a D-zoned 50k an hour, a little bit of road, and yeah, the engine behaves itself. You can knock yourself into a higher gear. Here we are cruising along in 6 at 50k an hour. Super quiet, a little bit firm, like I said, at lower speeds, but it can quieten down and become a normal car where you do feel as if, obviously everyone knows what a Mustang is when they see one, but you can somewhat fly under the radar surprisingly well. A little bit better than what I was expecting initially. And that's kind of what I like about it. It's not the engine doesn't dominate the experience. I absolutely love its steering and its brakes. I think they are probably my favorite things about this platform, if I'm being completely honest. And how refreshing is it that in this day and age, you can still get this with the manual. It's non-hybrid, naturally aspirated, rear-wheel drive. Like, it's just terrific, especially with a car like the Mustang Mach-E, which I will keep the opinions about that platform to myself. But you can still buy cars like this. It's just bloody fantastic. They're simple. They're modern enough that they're refined, but yet still involving and still somewhat visceral. For only just starting to nudge 100 grand, I mean, value for money, it's pretty good. And one thing that I'm really getting used to is because of the brake feel and how nice the steering is and how characterful the engine is, you can be driving at 3 or 4 tenths and you can really settle into how flowy this car can feel. It can really flow down a bit of road without actually driving it that aggressively, really, really nicely. I think power delivery wise, I prefer this over an LS. It's going to be a controversial topic, and I'm sure people are going to have opinions on that, but this is just a more characterful engine, and it sounds better. The 5 litre, that sort of smaller, high revving nature of it is, yeah, it is a lot more entertaining than an LS. So if this is the kind of driving feel that you want for, you know, not even 100 grand, for around 90, is it worth it? Yeah, 100% it is. Well, thank you for watching. If you enjoy watching, please consider subscribing. There are more cars to come in the following months, and see you for the next video.